On GB News, it's Bev Turner today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. Argentina have won their third World Cup in an exciting game, beating France 4-2 in a penalty shootout. Lionel Messi scored twice in a 3-3 draw that featured a hat-trick from France's Kylian Mbappe. The game ended in a shootout where Argentina's keeper saved one, while another shot from France went wide. Many are already considering this match to be one of the greatest finals in tournament history. In other news, a man has been charged with facilitating attempted illegal entry into the UK. It's after 4 people died and 39 were rescued from the English Channel when a migrant boat capsized earlier this week. Kent police say 19-year-old Ibrahima Bar, of no fixed address, has been remanded in custody and will appear at Folkestone Magistrates Court tomorrow. A cabinet minister says it's not fair that military personnel are having to cover for public sector workers on strike over the festive period. Oliver Dowden is urging unions to call off the industrial action, warning significant pay rises would end up making everyone poorer. More than 1,000 troops are expected to cover paramedics and border force staff. Police searching a property in Birmingham say they've found what is believed to be the remains of a child. West Midlands Police have been searching the garden of a house in Handsworth following information about a possible burial. A post-mortem examination will be carried out to establish the cause of death. A 52-year-old man has been charged with the murders of a mother and her 2 young children in Northamptonshire. Police found Anju Asok, an NHS nurse, and her children, aged 6 and 4, with serious injuries at a house in Kettering on Thursday. They all died a short time later. Post-mortem examinations determined all 3 died as a result of asphyxiation. Saju Shalavalel will appear at Northampton Magistrates Court tomorrow. Engineers have restored power to all homes in Shetland today, but burst water pipes have reportedly more than doubled across Scotland as a result of thawing ice. More than 5,000 homes were cut off last week as temperatures dropped as low as -17 degrees. A major incident was declared after heavy snow downed power lines. Scottish Water has repair teams out in several areas to fix the water supply. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Andrew Doyle.
A Norwegian actress faces 3 years in prison for pointing out that men can't be lesbians. Elon Musk suspends, then unsuspends journalists on Twitter. And as we approach Christmas, there are the annual calls to censor the Pogues' Fairy Tale of New York. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to the show. And thank you very much for my studio audience for coming here on a football night. That's fantastic. This, by the way, is Free Speech Nation, the show where we look at culture, current affairs and politics. And, of course, we keep you up to date on the latest lunacy from those lovable social justice activists as they eagerly hunt for the next thing to cancel. Coming up on the show, we have got the journalist E.J. Rosetta. She'll be here. She's spent 12 weeks reading the work of J.K. Rowling, couldn't find any evidence of transphobia, and that finding has not gone down very well online. I'll also be joined by the writer John Oxley. He'll be in the studio to tell us why the young people of Britain are giving up hope and why that could mean bad news for the Tory party. Also, Ella Whelan from Spiked is coming on to tell us about the BBC's censorship of the Christmas classic Fairy Tale of New York. And, of course, we're going to have plenty of questions from my lovely studio audience and from you guys at home. And my panellists this evening are Leo Kearse and Lewis Schaefer. Nice to see you both. Lewis, I've just been in your hometown, New York, home city, I should say.
Yes,
it's a lot of fun.
That's fun for you. You're there, I'm here.
Yeah, I know, but I got to go there. And you, but why aren't you there, by the way? Why did you leave?
Well, you spoke to those people.
I did. They don't like you very much.
No.
That's the impression I got. They not very popular.
Is that true?
Oh, no, don't worry, I was only joking. I forgot how delicate you were.
No. Is that really true?
Absolutely true. They sung your praises from dawn till dusk.
You don't have to say that. What exactly happened?
They told me all sorts of stuff about you, actually, but we'll talk about it in the break. Potentially criminal. Leo, how are you?
I'm OK, thanks.
Yeah, you haven't been anywhere in New York, anything like that?
No, I'm from Dumfries. It's not quite. It's only named Dumfries once.
Not much goes on in Dumfries.
You wouldn't call it Dumfries.
It sounds glamorous. Anyway, we're going to get some questions from our lovely studio audience. Our first question is from Lyle. Where is Lyle? Hi, Lyle.
Hi, Andrew. I'm back again.
Back again?
Yeah. And I want to ask you, how is it possible for men to be a lesbian?
How is it possible for men to be a lesbian? OK, so this story was all over the internet this week. There's a lesbian filmmaker and actress, Tonje Jevjon, who's facing up to 3 years in prison in Norway for saying that a man cannot be a lesbian. Now, this is an interesting... Leo, because are you a lesbian? I think you've made that claim before, haven't you?
Yeah, I think men make the best lesbians. She's wrong about this. No, it's interesting. She's actually facing 3 years in jail just for saying that men can't be lesbians, which is kind of factually correct.
Yeah.
It's interesting how quickly the left went from supporting LGBT rights to incarcerating LGBT people for saying that they exist.
Right, because this is a gay individual.
Yeah.
Right, so this is... It's sort of flipped to a kind of fantastical levels at this point, isn't it? Like jail time for saying something we all know to be true.
Yeah, and even by the rules of woke people, men can't be lesbians because, basically, if a man or a biological male then says he's a woman, self-identifies as a woman, then he's not a man anymore.
That's right. They say then he's a woman, therefore he's a lesbian.
Yeah, absolutely.
So actually, this is violating rules on all sides of the culture war debate, right?
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense.
So, I mean, the safe thing to do would not be to send this lesbian woman to jail for 3 years for saying it.
How about we don't send anyone to jail for anything they say? That would be a great start, wouldn't it? You know, that whole freedom of speech thing. You've got your First Amendment in America. It wouldn't happen there, would it?
No, of course, nothing like this ever happens in America. No craziness. But I think I think it's interesting that Leo is talking about this dressed as Hugh Hefner.
Yeah.
Can you see? Is that I'm happy when I heard this because it's women attacking men who want to be women.
Right.
Which is
why does that make you happy?
It makes me happy because I get to see. Basically, as a misogynist, I enjoy seeing men who want to be women and women attacking each other because it means I don't have to.
Everything about you, Lewis, is so dark.
These are glory years. These are glory years to be a misogynist.
Yeah, just to
incredible.
watch.
You can cheer on a biological male punching a woman in the face, and you're the good person.
Yeah.
You're the woke progressive person.
I mean, it is astonishing.
Is Leo just agreeing with me?
Yeah, and that shouldn't happen. Isn't this
No.
astonishing, though, Lewis? I mean, on a serious point, like the freedom of speech debate, and people say there is no threat to freedom of speech, but here you have someone actually potentially serving jail time for saying something that 99% of people believe to be the case. How can we have reached this point?
I think that's. I think we can reach that point because I tell you why. Because we're heading to a place where you can't offend anybody.
Right.
And
so this is about offence.
It's about offence. It's like a return to the time when the weakest people in the world, or the weak people, had nothing but their honour. And if you said something wrong about their honour, no matter how little money they had, no matter how powerful, whatever they were, they always had a go at you. And this is what's happening now: is that people today they feel they've got nothing. They've had it taken away from the powers that be.
So if it's about honour, should we just restore duelling? The idea, you know, maybe if someone offends you, you take them out and you have a pistols at dawn kind of situation. That would work.
It would, and maybe we're heading in that direction with this whole honour business. But maybe we should just empower people again. We're basically taking away their power, which is forcing them. So I think this is a brilliant point, Andrew. I think you're looking for a bit of humour in it, and there's no humour.
I don't find this funny at all. The idea of someone going to jail for anything they say, I find absolutely chilling. I don't think it's funny at all.
And
funny jail.
What if it's a clown jail?
Yeah.
Those things don't exist.
Yeah, I guess.
Jails are pretty horrible.
But talking of things coming back from medieval times like dueling, I mean, I really feel like the patriarchy is making a big comeback.
It is.
Like we had it pretty strong for a good few millennia, and then there was since the 60s there was this feminism stuff, and it went through a few waves, and now it's gone through the wave where it's just eating itself, and now the men are back on top.
The thing is,
being the lesbians and putting women in jail.
You make this point,
it.
Leo, as an anti-feminist, and actually your point is very similar to what a lot of feminists are now saying, which is that the patriarchy is back. So really, you are now a feminist.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Kind of. You're on their side, anyway.
I've been called a TERF online, which really offended me because I can't stand women.
OK, well, I now realise I should have definitely got a woman on this panel tonight. Anyway, we're going to move on to a question from Danny. Where is Danny?
I'm over here.
Hello, Danny. How are you?
Hello, I'm all right, thank you.
What's your question?
My question is, should Elon Musk be sanctioned for suspending journalists on Twitter?
This is interesting because, of course, Elon Musk bought Twitter, $44 billion, and then he said that he was doing it in order to preserve free speech on the platform. And let's face it, Twitter hasn't had free speech on that platform for a long time. You know, lots of executives there. I mean, specifically, there's been all these files that have been released from Twitter that have proved that, of course, there was a routine censorship policies going on, and particularly that tended to hit conservative accounts, and lots of accounts were nuked from the platform for no good reason other than they disagreed with some of those Silicon Valley 20-somethings. And Elon Musk claimed to be sort of tackling that. Now he's suspended a number of journalists. He's getting a lot of criticism. Leo, was he right to suspend these journalists?
Well, his excuse is that they were doxing his private location. So
Can you clarify what doxing means if people don't know?
So they're revealing where he was and where his family was through showing the live flight logs of his private jet. So, I mean, it's not as if you could actually climb, unless you had another private jet to fly alongside. You weren't really going to be able to do anything. But, I mean, it is quite intrusive, and it's, his children and stuff. But, I mean, it's just showing whoever's got the power abuses the power. So, we had these woke Silicon Valley 20-somethings had the power, and they abused it. And now Elon Musk has come in, and now he's abusing it.
But is it not the case that doxing and revealing someone's location has always been against the Twitter rules?
Yeah.
And not only that, whereas, all these feminists who got kicked off Twitter, no one ever told them why.
Yeah.
Or the conservatives, no one ever told them why it was. With doxing, it's very clearly stated, and has always been very clearly stated, in the Twitter terms of service. You can't do that.
Yeah, but the flight logs are publicly available information. So
I'm confused about this, Lewis, because some people say that the flight logs are public information. Some people said that this was doxing. I don't really know where to stand. But if it is the case that Elon Musk is censoring his political opponents, that's wrong. And that absolutely should not happen, and we should criticise.
No, not at all. The problem is you are very naive to believe that he meant what he said. And maybe he did mean what he said. I happen to be a free speech absolutist. Yes. You're a free speech absolutist. We're all free speech absolutists until they come after us.
Right.
And he spent $44 billion, which maybe he even spent $1 billion. Who knows what the financial arrangements are? But he should have a right to say, I don't want this guy.
Because it's his platform now.
It's his platform.
But then he's behaving like a king, Lewis. He's behaving like a monarch.
He's actually being like a guy who owns a restaurant, and he says, you know what? I don't want you in my place.
Lewis, I tell you what, if I owned Twitter, I wouldn't be banning people for criticising me. I would ban people for revealing my location or sort of, libeling or whatever, but not criticism.
And it was worse than that, because some guy jumped on his car. They thought he was there, but his kid was there. His kid was probably screaming, crying, seeing this. That's horrible.
OK, but is there any scenario?
And you would, Andrew.
I wouldn't ban anyone. I'd ban you just because you annoy me, but that's it. Leo, is there any scenario where how can this work? How can Twitter work? It's always got to be owned by someone.
Yeah.
And whoever is owning it is going to have some kind of partisan belief, right?
Well, eventually we're going to have a social media that's on the blockchain and nobody owns it, and it's a sort of self-sustaining collective. But until we reach that, that's sort of like communism. I don't think it can actually be achieved. No. What worries me about this is the EU have actually threatened Twitter with sanctions.
Oh, well,
they never threatened Twitter with sanctions when they were banning Donald Trump or banning the Babylon Bee, the satirical news site.
Yeah.
So why is it now? It just shows that the EU is now playing partisan politics as well.
And although I don't agree with people being banned from Twitter, there is a sense of schadenfreude. All of these sort of journalists...
That's the EU word.
That's the EU word, sorry, I was just trying to be inclusive. But the thing is, all of these journalists, they never complained about the censorship on Twitter. In fact, they cheered it on.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden they've found their free speech credentials because it's happened to them. And isn't that so often the way, Lewis? You can say that censorship is great until you are the one who gets banned.
Exactly. You can say freedom of speech is great until they come after you.
Yeah.
It works both ways. Here's the fact. The fact is we're heading to a time when people are both sides have been totally mistreated. People on the right have been completely mistreated on Twitter and Facebook for years. And now let's hope the other side have been, and then they'll all say, you know what, let's have a little peace.
Well, do you know what? That's a lovely idea, and I just hope everyone does kind of come together, because free speech should not be about left or right, should it?
Yeah.
It should be non-partisan issue. Anyway, we've got a question now from Mary. Mary, hello.
Hi. Are universities using equality laws to restrict free speech?
Universities using equality laws to restrict free speech. Well, the head of the Higher Education Watchdog has issued a warning to universities. This is Susan Lapworth, who's the chief executive of the Office for Students, has said universities prevent free speech by too often leaning more fully into equality rules than the law supports. Leo, we've known this for a long time. So a lot of the time, people will hide behind inclusivity, diversity, in order to censor, effectively. And that's the trick that they play. But now it's coming from the equality watchdog. Now we've got some kind of heft behind this criticism, right?
Yeah, I mean, this legislation, equality, diversity, inclusion legislation, hate speech legislation, it's all designed as a shield to protect people from discrimination or anything that's going to hurt their feelings, based on their characteristics. But now it's being used as a sword. It's turned into a weapon to attack people with the wrong opinions and silence people.
You see, so now we're back to this idea of offence. And Lewis, you were saying earlier that a lot of the problems with the free speech battle is that really this comes down to people being offended and upset and therefore wanting to silence people. Right. Can we ever get back to a position where when we're offended, that's sort of our problem, and we have to deal with our own sense of personal offence? Isn't that a better system?
I think it is, but we don't need the state to come in and tell the university what to do, and that is the problem. And this is the problem that you always miss.
Do I?
You miss it, the big problem, which is why do we have an office of getting people to have the same number of speakers on campus? Why do we need a government office of equality?
Look, I get it, Lewis. There is something odd about the government sort of forcing universities to adopt free speech policies.
Yeah.
It feels kind of self-contradictory, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Surely the principles should be sufficient.
You'd think the universities would want to do it themselves, because learning is based on the free discussion of ideas and people being able to speak freely and hold opinions that might offend other people. I mean, Galileo, all the great ideas that pushed forward technological or social progress have been hugely offensive to people. Galileo saying that the Earth went around the sun instead of the sun going around the Earth.
But Galileo was silenced, if you remember correctly. He basically stopped talking. And number two is that why should the state tell universities what to do? We have so many universities in this country. Surely one of them will stand up for free speech.
Can I ask you, Lewis, would you have supported the silencing of Galileo?
When I heard what he was threatened with, I would have said, Galileo, just keep it down.
Yeah, he should have been a bit more sensible.
Yeah, do you know what they threatened? They just showed him the Pope, his best buddy.
Yeah.
It's an incredible story. His best buddy became Pope, and Galileo thought, wow, my best buddy is the Pope. I can say whatever I want to say.
No, doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work that way. He says, now that I'm the Pope, you better keep quiet. What they did was, with Galileo, they took him to a room and they showed him the rack.
Yeah, and that was enough.
And that was enough, and he sort of changed his mind.
Well, he ended up under house arrest, but it was a nice part of town with a nice view, so he didn't do so badly. Anyway, after the break on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be talking to the writer E.J. Rosetta, who was tasked with searching J.K. Rowling's work for transphobic content, but lo and behold, couldn't find any. So she'll be here to tell us all about that. See you in a minute.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. The writer and journalist E.J. Rosetta was tasked earlier this year with writing an article called 20 Transphobic J.K. Rowling Quotes We're Done With. However, after combing through Rowling's work and tweets, she could not find any evidence of transphobia. And when she tweeted to that effect, she was met with a backlash. So I'm delighted to say that EJ Rosetta joins me now. Good evening. Thanks for coming. So let's start with your background. Your background is as a journalist. You've written for a variety of different publications, and then you were commissioned to write this piece. It sounds like the headline of the piece they commissioned, they'd already got a conclusion in mind. Is that right?
Yeah, they do. I'm a content writer, as well as a journalist and a ghostwriter.
Yeah.
So on this occasion, what happens is a Monday meeting comes around, and maybe 30 people will be in there, and it came to the part of the meeting where it was thrown out, OK, so who's on the LGBTQ beat this week? And then they turned it sort of around and said, I bet J.K. Rowling's being transphobic, so let's do one of those. Who can do that? And I'm ashamed to say I kind of put my hand up. And I went, oh, I can do that. How about... And they'd come up with 20 J.K. Rowling tweets or quotes. So I said, how about 20 we're done with? And they went, sold, you've got a job.
Oh, so you actually came up with the idea for the title?
Just the last bit.
Just the last bit of the title. OK, that's interesting. But had you in your mind then any ideas of the kind of quotations you were thinking of or the kind of things that she'd said? Because I have to be honest, I've read everything she's written about this topic, that big essay she wrote on her website. I've read through her tweets, etc. I've never found or seen any transphobic quotation. But did you have something in mind?
Yeah, you won't find them because there aren't any. I learned that the hard way. I had thought, I was utterly convinced that she was transphobic because I'd seen it so many times. I'd not even read the headlines, really, not even gone into the articles. But when something comes across your feed so many times, I believed it. I saw that she'd written the essay. I didn't read it. I read what other people had said about it.
Right.
And so I thought, OK, this will be quite easy. An article like that I can knock it up quite quickly, and I'm sure it will go very well. So I took the assignment, and then I had to do the research. And that's what...
So at that point, when you take a research, when you've got a sort of predetermined idea of what you're going to find and you don't find it, is the temptation to try and fudge it a little bit or try and, maybe write something that will please the publisher? Or, as you ended up doing, just saying what you found?
Well, I kept pushing the deadline back.
OK.
So, you get on Monday you get your 5 articles to write. So I kept sort of substituting them, hoping no one would notice.
Yeah.
And then at the 5-week point, I started getting chased for it. And then after 11 weeks, I was given the, deadline Monday, otherwise we're giving the title away. So I had to sort of think, OK, I could still write it up. But in the experience during the research, I obviously went to J.K. Rowling's words herself, and it all came to me sort of at once. I realised this isn't a transphobic woman at all. This is someone fighting for women's rights.
So why is it, do you think, that so many people claim that she is a transphobe and are insistent about it? I've had discussions with people online, and as I will with any claim that people make from any side of the political spectrum, I will say, what is your evidence for that claim? Because if you can't find that evidence, then I think as an adult, your responsibility is to revise your position. Why do you think so many people are refusing to either look at the evidence or, once they have, to revise their position accordingly?
I think it's a lot to do with our peers. So in the LGBT community, sort of, there's the umbrella of kinship, fellowship, and, one for all and all for one. So when a trans person says this is transphobic, you believe them. That's sort of the #1 rule of allyship. And, I'm a trans ally, a trans advocate, or have been for 10 years. And I, during the research phase, went to all these people in my real life and online, and the list of excuses I was given as to why they couldn't show me anything varied from, oh, she just is. Go and Google J.K. Rowling transphobic, which you must say, you must admit that's leading, to, oh, I won't do your research for you. So I was sort of deflected. And then when I went to sort of really study what she had been saying, I found myself agreeing, firstly, with everything that she said, and I couldn't find a single sort of transphobic message.
Well, whenever I've tried to, and I have tried to read and look at the people who are making the claims and take them seriously, and those articles tend to be just a series of bad faith interpretations of what she said and not addressing what she's actually said. So that's what we call confirmation bias, of course.
Yep.
And that's very, very, very dangerous, isn't it? Particularly when it's such serious allegations.
It is, and where it went from a clickbait article. So my job usually is, have you ever had something come up on your feed and it's why lesbians are like cats, and you think, who writes that drivel?
Oh, all the time?
That's me.
Oh, that's you.
I write that
okay,
dribble.
yeah, okay. So content providers.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But this was more of it turned into more of a journalistic thing.
Ah, okay.
So I kind of thought, this is quite a dangerous topic. This is a very serious allegation to be making. To say that J.K. Rowling is transphobic, I believed it, because I'd been shown screenshots of things she'd said. But then when I went to actually look at her words themselves, and look in context, it was not...
So let's talk about what happened then. So you tweeted your findings in a thread, which I read, and that got shared very, very widely. What was the response?
Well, the tweet exists. The final deadline was coming up, and instead of submitting the article, I put, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the attachments.
Yeah.
And the tweet exists because I wanted to link to a reason.
Yes.
At the time, I had maybe 2,000 followers, which is a lot. That's a lot of people who've sort of read my work and then come and followed me. But that's why the tweet exists, because I then put the link in. I said, I cannot write it, I'm sorry, and see below as to why.
Yeah.
I thought maybe 10 people would see it. But it just exploded.
And of course, when anything goes viral on Twitter, you get every possible kind of response, don't you? What kind of responses have you had?
At the beginning, the first thing that happened was I got a notification. It was instant that I was on a list called transphobes.
Okay.
So there's no way of taking yourself off that list. But it serves two purposes, the list. First of all, if you want to block everyone that is a transphobe, you can do so, fair enough, block everyone.
So you're on this block list now, effectively?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing it serves, the purpose it serves, is if someone is on Twitter and just fancies being mean to a transphobe, they can just go down the list. So
I see.
I got a lot of people find me that way, and just I got anything from death threats to threats of sexual violence to a picture of my head on a dead body, let's say, and you're next.
So quite violent imagery, violent threat. I mean, so that kind of thing, that just seems to be par for the course for social media, doesn't it? Just really horrible kind of behaviour. Why do you think we've reached this point where people can't have a sensible adult discussion about disagreements? Even of sensitive issues, why can't? Why is it the case that people who say that they're concerned about women's spaces are automatically branded as transphobic when it's perfectly possible to be concerned about women's spaces and to support trans equality?
Exactly. I don't know the answer completely, but I think it comes back to that sort of peer gratification and being part of the LGBT community. I go with community, so queer community, just for short.
Okay.
So within the community, if you try and step outside the bubble, you're seen as immediately, why are you doing that? Is there a reason? When the reason for me was just, I can't write it, that's all. I couldn't find it to be transphobic to the point where I could write the article.
Do you now regret writing the thread that caused so much attention, or do you think it was the right thing to do?
Yes and no. I absolutely wasn't prepared for the Twitter storm. It was my first rodeo. I'm quite a private person, quite shy, really. So having a situation where you're sort of getting so much thrown at you is quite overwhelming. But then something amazing happened, and I'm not going to pretend I was really cool and doing something else. I was on my phone, watching it.
Yes.
And then I was on J.K. Rowling's profile, and it went, she follows you.
Yeah.
And then I kind of went, oh God, J.K. Rowling follows me. I'm going to get a telling off. And then,
but she's seen the thread.
I went to click to message her, and she was typing. So I kind of, J.K. Rowling is typing. J.K. Rowling is typing. And then it was a message she just was reaching out to see. She said, "Are you okay?" And we had a couple of words back and forth, and I was struck by how incredibly gracious that was. After everything me and my kind had done to her, I wouldn't give us the time of day, but she's so a class act.
Absolutely. Well, it's a fascinating story, and E.J. Rosetta, thank you so much for coming to speak.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. After the break on Free Speech Nation, the writer John Oxley will be here to tell us why the younger people of Britain are becoming so disillusioned. See you in 3 minutes.
are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my wonderful panel, Leo Kearse and Lewis Schaefer, and we're going to help you at home deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. So if you've got any problems at all, just email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk and we will do our level best to answer your issues. Are Britons young giving up hope? An Opinium survey shows only a third of young people will achieve their career goals and only a quarter think they will earn more than the current median wage of £30,000 by the end of the next decade. John Oxley has written a fascinating article for The Spectator about this phenomenon and points out that a disillusioned younger generation could lead to real electoral problems for the Conservative Party. And John Oxley joins me now. Good evening.
Good evening.
So let's talk a little bit about your article. You're talking about young people being disillusioned. Why are they so disillusioned?
Well, I think the young people of today have been hit by kind of a series of crises for all of their adult life. You know, if you're, say, 30 now, you came of age, you started work during the financial crisis, and since then, real wages haven't really gone up at all. Growth has been fairly stagnant since then, and in the meantime, you've had things like house prices sort of increasing at a much more rapid rate. We've got huge inflation at the moment, but you've got the accumulation of sort of a decade's worth of inflation, and they're in a position where they've been stuck with that. They've never seen a real-term wages increase, and so they're not able to build up savings, building up capital in the way the previous generations have.
Yeah, but I saw the other week there was a survey in The Telegraph which was saying that 1 in 10 young people intend never to work. Now, I don't know if they get to make that choice, do they? Because otherwise they won't be able to eat or anything. But, you know, that does suggest that your thesis is sound.
Well, I think yeah, it does sort of play into that idea that there's sort of thought going around of what's the point of playing the game if the rewards aren't there at the end? Whether those people actually will get away with never working is a different thing. But there's a bigger sense that even if they do, even if we do, we won't end up in the same position that someone 30 or 40 years ago did.
How aware are young people of these sort of financial situations and housing and that kind of thing? Because when I was 18, 19, 20, I didn't know anything about any of that. So it does seem strange that they're thinking in those terms.
I think, particularly with housing, OK, maybe not at 18, 19, but particularly when people come out of university, as soon as you go into the rental market, you're massively aware of it. I've heard stories of properties going on the market for rental, and within 24 hours, there's been 80 or 90 people expressing interest. Rents have gone up massively, particularly in the post-COVID period. So as soon as you're out of that, then you're being hit by quite high rents. A lot of people at university are suffering the same thing. In some places like Bristol, Manchester, the big cities, students are increasingly staying at home because they can't afford to move out to university because of the high rent. And you see it when you go to the pub. I remember when I was a student, you could go and have a pint for £1.85. Now around London, it's £5-6 a pint.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the political ramifications of this. So you mentioned in your article that you think this is bad news for the Tories. But have the Tories ever really depended on the votes of young people?
To an extent, they have. There's this great myth that the Conservatives have always, as you get older, you become more Conservative. But if you look at when the Conservative Party has done really well, you look at the 1979, 1983 general elections, they also did really well with people under 25. Yeah. Maybe not as well as they did overall, but still much better than they're doing now. Even in 2010, David Cameron, he was polling sort of high 30s overall, but was solidly in the high 20s with first-time voters. Whereas now, there's some polling that suggests, even on under 40s, even under 50s, the Conservatives are looking at 10, 12% of the share.
So can they rely on that old adage that when people get older, they're going to vote Tory if they don't have anything?
That's exactly the point. The things that go along with turning you more Conservative as you get older is owning a house, so you're worried about interest rates. It's earning a bit more, so you're more worried about taxation. Whereas, I'd argue if that's not there, then why are you going to vote Conservative? You're not that interested in taxes being lower, you're more dependent on public services, and you don't have that building up capital. You're closed out of capitalism, and what's the point of a party that is a capitalist party?
So where does this leave Labour? Do you think that Labour is the more attractive option for the younger vote?
I think it is. I think that's what the polls are showing us all across the board. It's hard now, if you ask around among youngish people, to find someone who's going to be voting Conservative unless they're really sort of steeped in the Conservative Party. Yeah. And it opens up a huge policy angle for the Labour Party as well to appeal to those voters.
Do you think that the Conservatives have neglected the young or haven't even really cared or thought about them too much, and now they're reaping the consequences?
I think that's absolutely the case. You look at, this is a trend that's been going on for 10 to 20 years. It's been getting worse, but the Conservatives have been surviving, particularly because they're so locked down into the older person vote, the pensioner vote. You see sort of 2017, 2019, the age at which you became more likely to vote Conservative than not was sort of around the 40 to 50 mark, and that's been pushing up over about 20 years or so.
So was there something then to Liz Truss's idea of rejuvenating the economy, economic growth being her watchword, and now that appears to not be the priority?
You can't solve these problems unless you have growth, and I think the strength of Liz Truss was she did identify the problem, and she did say if we want to have more money in people's pockets, we need to grow the economy overall, but you also have to be able to deliver on that in a way that people have confidence with, and that's where she went wrong. But ultimately, if you're not growing, you're stagnating, and if there's less money to go around, then that just means everyone's getting poorer.
So if you had the reins of number 10, if you could determine which way the party should steer in order to attract these younger voters that they so desperately need, what do you think they should do?
The biggest thing is housing. That is the biggest driver of cost for young people, and there's a huge opportunity there to reduce the effect that planning restrictions have to get more houses built. Another thing is childcare. When people get a little bit older, they start having children into their 30s, it can be a huge cost for working parents. There needs to be some sort of answer on there, whether it's deregulation to bring some of the costs down, or it is support from the state for those costs. You see it in other countries around Europe that does come into play, and that does help. And that's, you know, those two things would take a lot of the pressure off. And I think also just generally thinking about young people, young families, what they need, and really getting that sort of thinking to the heart of the Conservative Party and weaning themselves off relying simply on older voters.
I mean, might it be about getting sort of new blood? Might it be figures such as Kemi Badenoch who might have more of might resonate more with younger voters, that kind of thing?
I think what you have to do is listen to the concerns of young people, and that probably does mean a lower age of MPs. But, you know, Rishi Sunak's 42. He's not that alienated from this world.
Yeah.
But there is an opportunity there, certainly at the next election, to bring some new blood in or to look to the younger generation within Parliament at the moment.
John Oxley, thanks very much for joining me. And after the break, BBC Radio 2 has joined other media outlets to censor the classic Christmas song Fairy Tale of New York. Is this cultural vandalism, or is it just moving with the times? Ella Whelan will be here to discuss.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there. Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Everyone has their favourite Christmas song, and for many, it's the Pogues and Fairy Tale of New York. Over the years, however, pressure has been put on radio stations to edit out 2 words from the lyrics that are deemed by some to be homophobic and sexist insults. Back in 2007, Radio 1 decided to remove the words as, quote, some members of the audience might find them offensive. Radio 2 has now joined the fold this year. Journalist and author Ella Whelan has been writing about this for Spiked this week, and she joins me now. Good evening, Ella. This debate appears to be perennial. It seems as though every year we have a debate about the Pogues and Kirsty MacColl singing Fairy Tale of New York. And was it the case that... So Radio 1 decided ages ago that they weren't going to play it, but Radio 2 always thought, well, we've got an older demographic, and they're OK with it. Something's changed.
Yeah, various radio stations. The BBC actually went through a period at one point of sort of having internal debates about not just whether, who would play what version or whether they'd give one station licence to play the uncensored version, and it was kind of extremely messy.
Yes.
And I think pretty much now Radio 2 has had to kowtow to the pressure of people. Actually, no, that's not right. I don't think callers have been calling in.
Yes.
There's no evidence to say that people have been ringing in and say, listen, before you hit play on the Pogues button, please will you take out the F word.
Yes.
But I think it's just the kind of climate that we live in now, which is that all these things have to be preempted.
That's a really good point, because, this is still a really popular song, and you don't hear people up in arms with placards complaining about the F word, which is a homophobic slur in some people's views, and the S word, which is a sexist slur, and obviously we're not saying the words because we're before the watershed now. But people don't seem to care, actually. This is just coming from above, isn't it?
No, and it's a hard one to argue about because, it's the use of the F word in that song is very particular.
Yes.
And of course there are people who get drunk of Christmas time and will sing that particular word very loudly.
Right.
Because some of them are homophobic, maybe because some of them are ticked off at the fact that they keep being told they're not allowed to sing it.
Yeah.
But the point of that word is that it doesn't mean a homophobic slur in the context that Shane MacGowan wrote it. And the reason I'm saying it's hard is because you start to sweat and sound like you're being some kind of apologist for
Yes.
a homophobic language, but you're not actually. The time it was written, that word means, the etymology of it means bundle of sticks, and in Ireland, in Hiberno English, it means you lout, you bum, you kind of
lazy
you lazy
kind of
person. Yeah,
exactly.
It's just and the song is between a heterosexual couple. It would be quite weird for her to call him a homophobic slur. It just doesn't make sense in any case. And so there's an important point here, though it is a kind of a drunk Christmas song. Shane MacGowan. Many consider him to be a poet, and lots of his lyrics, though he kind of sings them, half-cut and sort of unintelligible, are beautiful, wonderful lyrics. His song Aisling has got incredible lyrics in it. And so, there is a sort of quite important point here, which is that you are technically censoring a song, a poem, someone's, a piece of art, if you want to go that far.
It is a piece of... I mean, this isn't like the Venga Boys or Two Unlimited or something. Like, this is something that... It's actually a narrative, isn't it? It's an argument between a couple, and they've become disillusioned with their relationship with each other, and it dramatises that through the song, and part of that is the language that they use. So is this really about people not willing to engage with the artistic choices that people make?
Yeah, well, actually, to his credit, I mean, Shane MacGowan, he's come under a lot of pressure about this, but he did at one point give a statement to, I think it was RTE, or there was a kind of a controversy in Ireland as well.
Yes.
And he said, listen, I've written this song that's two characters who are they're not angels, I think that's what he said.
Yeah.
They're pretty nasty people who are kind of out on their luck and are drunk and are insulting each other. They're not going to use nice language.
Right,
they're going
exactly.
to use unpleasant language. And, sometimes you have to do that in order to portray a character who's taken it quite seriously. I mean, the Pogues Twitter account has since tweeted abuse at people who have defended the song from censorship. I don't think Shane MacGowan's behind the Twitter account.
Okay,
I think it might just be a sort of side guitarist or something who's taken issue with this. But, Shane made the point of, you take the song at its face value. Nick Cave actually wrote a really great one of his Red Hand Files, a defence of it, where he said, a song is something that stands on its own and it's imprinted in history, and to meddle with it is to do something kind of truly awful.
Yes.
And I think we do have to take that sort of aspect of artistic censorship seriously, because when you look at the excuses of why Radio 1 and Radio 2 now have banned it, it's not because it's a rude word and it's before the watershed. It's not because, radio doesn't play that kind of stuff. It's because they imagine that young people, I think one of the phrases that the statement used was younger audiences are more sensitive to gender and issues around gender and sexuality. and you just want to scream, but it's not about gender and sexuality.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not what this song or this word is about.
So is it about a lack of trust in the listeners? Younger listeners, they think, won't be able to interpret this in a sufficient way. They'll just hear the word and be offended for the word's sake.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's a real insult to young people if you imagine that they cannot understand the importance of context.
Yes.
So, you know, frankly, you're an idiot if you're listening to a Christmas song that's, you know, people have sung for, you know, since the 80s, and you imagine that you are the first one in the world to notice that there's a homophobic slur in the middle.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you've discovered the, you know, hidden meaning of Fairy Tale of New York. I mean, it's ridiculous. No one thinks that. There's just a sort of knee-jerk, I think, Philistine reaction to it. And also, I mean, you know, if you want to go into the kind of, I know I'm sounding now like I'm putting Fairy Tale of New York up on a pedestal of some kind of great, interesting work of art. But actually, you know, the way in which Irish people use the English language is very interesting. Hiberno English, there's lots of stuff that we kind of, words that don't mean the same thing. So if someone says something's deadly, that means it's fantastic.
Right.
Words like, you know, something like a cute whore is someone who isn't a beautiful prostitute, but is someone who's like a clever so-and-so,
Right,
you know,
okay,
someone
yeah,
not to be trusted. It often uses curse words, so I can't say a lot of them now because before 8 o'clock. But there's, you know, it's a really rich kind... People have written pieces on this. It's a really rich language.
And it's part of these characters.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah, and, you know... Even if, I think, you know, because you can also feel too apologetic, even if it was a homophobic slur, because there is, you know, Money for Nothing by the Dire Straits and stuff like that most definitely uses that F word in a derogatory way. I think we should also challenge the idea that people are so fragile that simply hearing that word played on a radio station would send them into some kind of apoplex.
Well, that's a good example, isn't it? So, for instance, in a lot of Eminem's songs, he does use that word in an explicitly anti-gay or perceived to be anti-gay way. I mean, you could argue that he's playing a character as well. There's that as well. But you know, the radio stations haven't, by and large, played those songs, or they've always beeped those words out. Similarly, with rap and gangster rap, you'll have the N-word beeped out or just not played at all. So is there a case to be made on the BBC's defence to sort of say, well, look, they don't play those other songs, so isn't the word sufficient just from those perspectives?
I think if it was the case that it was just an issue of kind of cleaning up and making everything sort of uniform, then I'd have less of a case.
Okay.
But the fact is that this has been, by the BBC's own statement, the idea is that young people are more enlightened than those of us who are over the hill.
I see.
And so then, you know, we have to, in order to kind of satisfy their hurt feelings or to protect them from having hurt feelings, we have to neuter certain words. And that's the thing that annoys me.
Yeah.
Not the bleeping out. I'm not so in love with the F word or the S word that it ruins the whole song without me. I mean, Kirsty MacColl started singing, actually, while she was still alive, started singing You Blackguard or You Haggard or something. They changed it themselves.
Yes.
You know, whatever. But it's the idea that you have to censor in order to make things acceptable in 2022 that is the most annoying.
I mean, this is a broader problem with the arts generally, isn't it? I mean, that you had an edition of Huckleberry Finn was republished without the racial epithets in that book. But, of course, once you take the racial epithets out, the book loses its meaning because it's a satire against the racists, right?
Well, that's in a completely different league to taking the F word out of Fairy Tale of New York, because that's completely changing the meaning of an extremely important anti-racist book.
Yes. I suppose, I mean, the principle is similar.
Well, but yeah, but it's this kind of idea that, you know, that words have no relationship to their context. And that's a very dangerous thing, because it means that we're completely simplifying the English language, which, you know, there are even, you know, if you want to kind of get into the ins and outs of it, there are so many words that mean so many different things. I mean, it's fascinating. There's reasons why people study it for their whole lives.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly rich language that it cannot be simplified down into narrow political meanings in a certain kind of social or political time frame.
I mean, you say that this is very patronising to young people, you know, particularly, you know, with Radio 1 banning it, but Radio 2 not for a long time. But don't they have a case insofar as a lot of young people do and have complained about certain, and they do have knee-jerk reactions sometimes to certain words, irrespective of context. Is it a generational thing?
Well, I think yes and no. It tends to be that the people who pipe up about this kind of stuff are younger, and, you know, I would argue stupider. And, you know, and you know, there's a level here where you kind of have to say, young people need to be educated about what's right and what's wrong in order to form their own opinions properly as adults, and they have to be challenged. There's this kind of ridiculous idea that some 19-year-old tweets something and we all have to be like, yeah, absolutely, of course. You think, oh my God, this kind of stuff I came out with when I was 19. I'm glad no one treated me like that.
Yeah.
But then, on the other level, actually, most young people are not like that.
Yeah.
Most young people are very robust. Most young people, if they're politically active, they're able to tussle with these kind of ideas and not be frightened of a word. And so I think actually the BBC is doing young people pretty dirty.
Well, Ella Whelan, thanks very much for joining us tonight. Time now for another break. Coming up in the second hour of the programme, I'll be asking why the Cambridge Dictionary has seen fit to add a secondary definition of the word woman. See you in a moment.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens,
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello there, welcome back. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB Newsroom. Argentina have won the Qatar World Cup after beating France in a thrilling match which saw extra time and a penalty shootout. Fans in Argentina celebrated their captain, Lionel Messi, who has finally won the biggest prize in football. Messi scored twice in a 3-3 draw that featured a hat-trick for France's Kylian Mbappe. The game ended in a penalty shootout where Argentina's keeper saved one, while another shot from France went wide. Many are already considering the match to be one of the greatest finals in tournament history. In other news, a teenager has been charged with facilitating attempted illegal entry into the UK after 4 people died while trying to cross the English Channel. A major rescue operation was underway early this week after a migrant boat capsized. 39 people were rescued. 19-year-old Ibrahima Ba, of no fixed address, has been remanded in custody and will appear at Folkestone Magistrates Court tomorrow. A cabinet minister says it's not fair that military personnel are having to cover for public sector workers on strike over the festive period. Oliver Dowden is urging unions to call off the industrial action, warning significant pay rises would end up making everyone poorer. More than 1,000 troops are expected to cover paramedics and border force officials. Police searching a property in Birmingham say they have found what is believed to be the remains of a child. West Midlands Police have been searching the garden of a house in Handsworth following information about a possible burial. A post-mortem examination will be carried out to establish the cause of death. And a 52-year-old man has been charged with the murders of a mother and her 2 young children in Northamptonshire. Police found Anju Asok, an NHS nurse, and her children, aged 6 and 4, with serious injuries at a house in Kettering on Thursday. They all died a short time later. Post-mortem examinations determined all 3 died as a result of asphyxiation. Saju Shelavalel will appear at Northampton Magistrates Court tomorrow. And engineers have restored power to all homes in Shetland today, but burst water pipes have reportedly more than doubled across Scotland as a result of thawing ice. More than 5,000 homes were cut off last week as temperatures dropped as low as -17 degrees. A major incident was declared after heavy snow downed power lines. Scottish Water has repair teams out in several areas to fix the water supply. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Free Speech Nation.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. As I've said many times on this show, one of the key tricks of authoritarians is to redefine language in order to reinforce faith in the ruling ideology. So it should come as little surprise to see that members of staff at online dictionaries are busy redefining terms, not in accordance with common usage, which of course is the role of the dictionary, but in accordance with how they see the world. So this week, the Cambridge Dictionary added a secondary definition to the word woman. And this was the definition they've added: an adult who lives and identifies as female, though they may have been said to have a different sex at birth. What does this even mean? What does it mean to live and identify as female? If a woman doesn't wear makeup or cuts her hair short, is she less of a female? If she watches rom-coms, has pillow fights, and goes prancing in fields of lilac, does she get more woman points? I mean, how does this work? Reinstating old-fashioned stereotypes of male and female in order to define what a man and a woman is gets us precisely nowhere. It certainly isn't progressive. And yet that's what activists who believe in gender identity ideology are currently expecting us to do. Because just as the implementation of critical race theory in our schools has led to heightened racial division, gender identity ideology takes us backwards in the name of progress. A few months ago, Merriam-Webster, which is America's oldest dictionary, did something very, very similar. So they added a secondary definition to female, and their definition reads as follows: having a gender identity that is the opposite of male. Again, this is a somewhat useless definition. Saying that female is the opposite of male is a bit like defining the sun as not the moon. And as with so many things in the culture war, the Cambridge Dictionary is simply following the lead of the Americans. So let's have another look at this new definition of woman. This is from the Cambridge Dictionary. They say an adult who lives and identifies as female, though they may have been said to have a different sex at birth. But how can one be said to have a different sex at birth? We all have a sex at birth. I mean, it's usually observed and recorded long before birth. Activists claim that it is assigned, as though the midwife just flips a coin. But we all know the truth. And more to the point, hardly anyone will recognise the Cambridge Dictionary's new definition of woman, because although language inevitably evolves, and the dictionary is meant to record such natural evolutions, that has not happened in this case. Rather, just like publishing houses, libraries, museums, theatres and other creative and educational industries, online dictionaries have been ideologically captured. And this means that the staff will continue to tweak definitions, not to reflect common usage, but as a form of engineering, in the hope that by redefining words, they can modify the way in which we see the world. This is a standard tactic of culture warriors. They pretend that their view of the world represents an established consensus, but it doesn't. And for the sake of our sanity, we should probably all get hold of some physical copies of dictionaries, preferably those published in 2010, before the activists gained their chokehold on our society. Because perhaps in years to come, we'll need to have some kind of resource to remind us what words actually mean, rather than what activists would like them to mean. The novelist Philip K. Dick said that the basic tool for the manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words. And he was right. Language always evolves, but when changes to definitions are imposed, that's the very essence of authoritarianism. We mustn't let them get away with it. And I'm very interested in this idea of redefinitions, Leo, because this has been happening before. The Merriam-Webster dictionary also added a redefinition of racism. Racism used to mean hatred or prejudice towards people because of different skin colours.
Yep.
And they've decided it now means an equation, prejudice plus power. They're saying it's to do with structural imbalances, and therefore white people, can't be the victims of racism, etc. In other words, they're using a definition of racism that very few people agree with. What's going on?
They're using a definition of racism that's racist, because they say that only white people can be racist. What's interesting is that the new definitions are really convoluted and long-winded, which shows that they're kind of contrived and not really comfortable in themselves. When you've got some that really works, that makes sense, it's usually a simple saying. Like, Martin Luther King saying, I have a dream that, one day my children will be judged on the content of their character rather than the colour of their skin. He didn't say within a paradigm of intersectional power structures.
He didn't.
And
bigot.
Continue
What a bigot.
like that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so it's the same with this. We had a very simple explanation for what a woman is, and it wasn't transphobic, because a trans woman is somebody who identifies as that, and is I guess a type of a woman, but a trans woman. And it's not,
Well, it's the difference between people who think that woman is a biological category and people who think it's an identity category.
Yeah.
That's basically the distinction here.
Yeah.
But this is odd, isn't it, Lewis? I mean, if you were working at a dictionary and you had the power to sort of change what words mean just to kind of fit in with your belief system, you'd probably take that, wouldn't you? I imagine you would.
I would, but something, here's where you're wrong. Because the truth is that people are using that as a definition now. They see men as women, so why shouldn't it be in the dictionary?
I'll tell you why, Lewis, because it's only a very small minority of people who use that definition. Whereas, I understand this idea that language will evolve and change, and then the dictionary has to keep up with that. That's its role.
Right.
What you've got is a minority of people who claim that this is a widely received definition, as you have just erroneously done.
No.
And they've imposed it, whereas actually only a few people do. Why not just do what the dictionaries were meant to do, which is record the way in which it's being used normally?
And it is being used that way. Maybe we don't see it because we're like older, older
Speak for
guys.
yourself.
Yeah. I mean,
But
compared to
don't you age shame me.
Well, I'm saying we don't know what's going on in the world. I think there are lots of people today who will look at a person who we would call a man, and they would say that they would call him a woman.
Fine. But
they called it a secondary definition.
Okay, but yes, there was a secondary definition, but there are loads of examples of the politicisation of dictionaries. Now, this has happened before. Do you remember when the Oxford Dictionary pronounced that the word of their year, about 4 years ago, was youthquake, right? Now, youthquake was this idea that you had this kind of, that the young people were rising up and they were becoming politically aware and politically active. It was a really politicised and partisan term, which no one was really using, apart from a few left-wing journalists. It suddenly becomes word of the year in the Oxford Dictionary, and then everyone stops using it. I'm the only one who's used that in the past 3 years, right? so no, it's definitely political. I think they had they as a singular pronoun as word of the year last year. Again, something that just has not caught on. People aren't. Very few people are using it in that way.
Yeah, and the people, you can see people mimicking this. Autocrats and dictators in China and in Russia, like Putin, says that anybody who describes his war in Ukraine as a war is committing a crime and has to go to jail. And it's the same thing. If you describe Eddie Izzard as a bloke, you're committing a crime and you have to go to jail. Even though, this is 1984. George Orwell said it in 1984. The party made you deny the evidence of your own eyes and ears. This is what dictators try to do to change reality.
Now, Lewis, I know you're going to be contrarian for the sake of it, but you have read 1984, haven't you? And you are aware that it is a feature of all dystopian scenarios.
I lived it.
You've lived it.
There was 27.
You've actually been through it, so you know it's more a biography for you. But
yes, no, it is a problem when they say you can't use a word, but they just said it's a secondary definition. So what harm is? I don't see the harm. Dictionaries have always lied. When I was a kid, we used to look for the dirty words, and there were never any dirty words in a dictionary.
But you probably had a school dictionary that quietly censored those out.
Well, now no, because I'm old enough to remember when they didn't put those words in. Maybe now they do. That was our main source of fun, was going and finding the dirty words. But the other thing is that and this is the thing about you, Andrew, which makes you so lovable. People love you. The truth is, you're so naive. Is you can't believe anything anymore, not even the dictionaries. The fact that you hold the dictionary up high as this is the font.
I just trust that if you're going to work for a dictionary, you're going to have professional standards. You know, what's wrong with that?
They do, and they said it's a secondary the word can, C-A-N.
Yes.
Right? In America, you go to the can. That's the loo.
Yes.
Okay? Not everybody calls it the can, but it's in the dictionary, can meaning...
OK,
toilet.
no, I understand that. Leo, does Lewis have a point there that actually this doesn't really matter? Even if only like a handful of people are using this term in this way, it could still get in there as a secondary definition. That's fine.
No, it definitely matters, because this is what people refer to, and it becomes the new reality. It becomes the new way of referring to women. Even though I've read that about 10 times, I still can't work out what they actually mean.
But that's the big issue, is that actually, Lewis, secondary definition or not, it's really badly written. And you would expect that the people who write the dictionary are good at writing.
It's what do they call that? A tautology.
Yeah, it's a tautology. Yeah. You see? Well done. Well done. That's actually made his day. that he got a difficult word right.
I'm not a proper intellectual like you.
No, faux intellectual.
No, yeah. The piece that you wrote is beautiful, and I think I feel the feeling, which is, and I agree with Leo, we got to watch out for this creep. It's part of the creep.
Yes, exactly.
But at the end of the day, if people are using that definition, it should be in the dictionary.
But they're not.
They're not.
They are. They are using it. There are people who call what we would say men who've just transitioned into women as women. Okay?
Although they typically use the phrase trans women, don't they?
But no, that's what we do. Okay. The young people today call them women. Period.
Well, there you have it. Lewis Schaefer is far more in touch with the young than either me or Leo. That's a big revelation for the show. Anyway, after the break on Free Speech Nation, it's high time we got some more questions from our wonderful audience. So please don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to the show. Now, before we get more questions from the audience, I just want to take another email. I think this is an important topic. This comes from Simone. Simone says, is J.K. Rowling right to make her sex abuse centre for women only? So you might have heard this week that the best-selling author J.K. Rowling has personally funded a new centre for women who have survived sexual violence. And she's said that she feels that there is an unmet need for Scottish women who want women-centred and women-delivered care at such a vulnerable time. And this news, of course, comes amidst concerns about First Minister of Scotland Nicola Sturgeon's gender recognition reform bill, which could potentially damage women's rights. So I'm going to go to our resident Scott. So this is a centre that's been opened up in Edinburgh, and this is obviously J.K. Rowling's hometown, and she's saying, you know, there are no rape crisis centres for women that are for women only anymore in biological terms. That doesn't exist. She's right about that. So why... and she's got a lot of abuse for opening this centre. What's going on?
Yeah, she's had some rape threats, ironically. I mean, it's you'd understand that women, if they've been abused by a penis, might want a space that's free from penises. That to me just sort of makes sense. It's like if you've been in a machete attack, you might not want to go to the machete shop. So I don't really understand why there's a problem with this penis-free rape crisis centre.
It's interesting because she's funded it fully, so it's not a registered charity, which means the government can't step in and shut it down, which of course is making people particularly
angry. Which of course
angry.
they'd love to. They'd love to spend our tax dollars shutting down a rape crisis centre this time. And, you know, I understand, you know, transgender women can be victims of violence, and, you know, that's obviously terrible, but there are other centres for them, and I can understand. I just don't understand why we've got this like pyramid of sort of victimhood, of oppression, with I don't know if transgender or Muslim people are at the top, but one of the two are at the top. It varies. They switch around occasionally. But everybody, you know, below them, if you're below somebody else, then your feelings don't count. And like, so women's feelings don't count because you know, some transgender women are saying, "Oh, wait a minute, what about my feelings?"
Lewis, isn't this so weird? Like, you would have thought that someone, a philanthropist like J.K. Rowling, donating all this money to open up a centre for raped and sexually abused women, how could that be greeted with anything other than congratulations, that's a really good thing that you're doing there, rather than death threats and violence? I mean, what kind of world are we living in?
I think you have to, first of all, you have to, I mean, I don't want to say that what that is a bad idea. What she did is a bad idea. I actually did a benefit for her, one of her charities.
Did you?
Yeah, called One Family, One Single Mother.
What kind of benefit?
It was a huge thing. It was the biggest thing that I did. It was in the Dominion Theatre in front of like 1,400 people. That was hysterical.
Oh, I'm sure you were wonderful.
No, it was one of those. I remember it because it was so unusual.
Yeah. Sometimes your gigs go well, Lewis.
And I met her. She seemed like a lovely person. And at the time, I didn't realize I was helping sow the seeds of my own inability to see my own children.
Is that what you were doing?
And that's what was happening, yeah, because that was her whole thing. It was her thing. It was about sowing this sort of thing that men are bad. I
don't think she thinks men are bad at all.
I think she does. I think she thinks that men are bad and that single mothers are better than married people.
I think she's just setting up a rape crisis centre, rather than Lewis's theory, which
Yeah,
is
well, you
quite
know
outlandish.
something, you would think that,
I
but,
would think that.
there's an
She's not
ulterior motive for all of these things. I'm not saying she sits this, I hate men.
Goodness sake, Lewis. Leo, it's clearly a good thing.
No, well, Lewis has got a point, because they won't let him in a frock.
They won't. They won't, and rightly not. OK, let's get some questions out from our audience.
Was that too much, Andrew?
No, I mean, well, you're always too much. That's just your innate charm. Our next question is from Heather. Where is Heather?
Here.
Hi, Heather.
Hi.
What's your question?
Is Greta Thunberg right to back the Edinburgh University film protesters?
Yeah, so I thought Greta Thunberg was all about climate campaigns and that kind of thing, but recently at Edinburgh University, Edinburgh again, Leo, we'll come to you about this, because this is a group of students who blocked a film screening, and this was the Edinburgh Academics for Academic Freedom were showing this film called Adult Human Female, which has been criticised by the university's Pride Society. And I've seen the footage of this. There are people outside literally blocking people's entrance to the film. Now, Leo, I would have... and now Greta Thunberg has come in and supported the censorship of this film.
Yeah.
So there's a few things here. I would have thought, firstly, if you don't want to see a film, just don't go.
Yeah.
And then the problem's solved, isn't it? And you don't have to worry about other people seeing the film. They can make their own choices, right?
Yeah.
But now you've got a climate activist saying, I like that you're censoring this film. What's going on?
Yeah, and what's interesting is that she's sort of making climate activism this sort of partisan issue. So, you know, the left and all these people that support this kind of stuff are on this side. So it's
Isn't
sort
that
of
quite normal,
alienating.
though?
It's alienating for people who might be on the right, might agree that, you know, climate change is a bad thing. So they'll be like, well, I'm gender critical, so now I can't support climate change. I don't really understand why she's done that.
You're expected now to support all sorts of causes, right? So the way it works is that if you support, you know, if you're against gender-critical feminism, you've got to be for Greta Thunberg and her environmental campaign and other things as well.
But then a lot of the stuff behind sort of gender-critical, you know, people are pushing back against gender ideology is the fact that it's based on science. You know, the biology says, look, the chromosomes show that, you know, males and females exist.
Yes.
And there are biological differences. Look, a penis. Look, a vagina. There's measurable things. You can measure. I mean, you might not need that big a ruler, but you can measure those things. Whereas, you know, so for Greta Thunberg to come in and be like, oh, no, biology doesn't exist. She's denying that
weird.
science, and then the whole climate change thing is like, follow the science. I think climate change is a load of nonsense as well now.
Yeah, that's a very that was a very good point up until the end. Lewis, what would you say about censorship? I mean, this idea that if you're so upset about a film, so offended about a film, blocking other people from seeing it, do you think that's the answer?
No, obviously not. And all of these demonstration things have to do with one thing in this country, which is the police don't act. As if they just said, you know what, we're just going to act, and we're not going to allow you to stop a public.
So you think the police should have intervened and literally pulled those protesters away?
Of course
because they were blocking the entrance.
Yeah, of course they're blocking an entrance, or they're inside, they're trespassing. But you know, the police don't act today.
Well, to be fair, that was the Scottish police, and where were they? I mean, I suppose they would support the protest.
It was at the top of a flight of steps, and they're all too fat to get up there. But I mean, the protesters look pretty beefy. I mean, I know they're all genuine, real women, allegedly. But you know, one of them I saw, Robin Woof. Which is apparently the noise you make when you see her walk past. But yeah, she was standing there like full on like Adam's apple, like desperate Dan Jaw, saying, you know, I'm a woman, and this is right. And it's like, whoa.
This story is actually more interesting than you think it is, because it has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with the fact that Greta Thunberg sent the message that she sent to a guy was 3 hearts.
That's what she said in the tweet.
In the tweet,
yes.
3 hearts. We don't know what that 3 hearts was. It could have just been, hey, Roger, I remember our weekend that we spent together at the climate change.
OK, so well, people have taken those 3 hearts as an endorsement of the protest.
And it wasn't that.
But
Is that she's fed up with being like a little girl. She wants to get randy.
She looks like she was one of the original people who's put on puberty blockers.
Yeah.
OK.
I would blame veganism.
You blame veganism for everything, Lewis. We're going to move on now to a question from Rick. Where is Rick? Hello, Rick.
Hello. Should there be so many public sector workers focused on diversity issues?
Yeah, so I couldn't believe this week. I saw this report, and this was by Conservative Way Forward, and it says that almost 8,000 public sector workers concentrate on equality and diversity initiatives. But here's the kicker. It also found that £427 million is being spent on these roles. Right now, Leo, you've spoken a number of times about diversity and inclusion and the industry that surrounds it.
Yeah.
That's much more than I assumed it would ever be. That's a huge amount of taxpayer.
And that's an undercount. So, I mean, we're looking at, like, £500 million in direct spending just on these salaried roles.
Yeah.
We're not looking at the grants and all that kind of stuff and the peripheral charities that come in and provide training. We're losing 1 million days, at least 1 million days a year in the public sector to training. And it's all nonsense training. It's all, training around how to recognise your intersectional, transgender, feminist, whatever it is. None of it is the stuff. You go along, you get a free sandwich, and you sit there, and you think, well, now I've got to do more work tomorrow. So it's a drain. It's a drain on the sort of efficient
it's not a drain for those people who are
productivity.
paid. The people who are paid to sort of run the workshops, they're making a mint.
No, and they've created this sort of mafia. It's like Stonewall. They go in and they say, like, listen, if you don't pay us to do this, then you're not ticking the right boxes in your equality, diversity, and inclusion. And obviously, none of it's for genuine inclusion. There's still swathes of the population that are looked down on and discriminated against, but they're openly discriminated against. Nobody's. You get adverts that openly discriminate against white men.
Yeah.
We know that there's no, BBC inclusion officer making sure that there's enough Brexit voters represented on a panel anywhere.
Maybe they should have done that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That might have some political diversity.
They should. But, nice. I mean, if we're looking for more money for nurses, I mean, I think at the very least, some of these people are paid well over 100 grand a year. At the very least, we can scrap all these roles and put that money into nurses.
Lewis, is there a role? I mean, I know you didn't go to the diversity training here, which we can tell from the way that you behave, but is there a role for that kind of training in society, do you think?
You know what? Most people don't do any work whatsoever. So what's the difference? 8,000 people in the government who don't do any work? I mean,
but they get paid a lot as well,
doesn't matter. That's a drop in the bucket. The government does it, and I'll tell you something about government employees. They're better off when they don't do any work. They're less trouble.
That's true.
The thing is, I mean, it is true that when you go to those training sessions, I used to work in a call centre, and we used to go to these training sessions, and you would just literally be passing the time and just getting through it. And, I've had friends of mine who are teachers who are doing unconscious bias training.
Yeah.
And all of the research says it definitely does nothing. I mean, like, we know that it achieves literally nothing.
Right.
But they're not going to complain because they're like, well, we get a day off, we just get to sit there and do nothing. So,
so
maybe we're all complicit.
Do you know what? I'd like to have a job where I actually have to go on something. That's a dream of mine.
It would be good for you. Then you can socialise and you can learn social skills.
You know what? I would have loved it. It sounds like so much fun. He says have a sandwich. I'm thinking, what a great place.
Yeah, but the unconscious bias stuff, I mean, they're probing into your mind, aren't they? They're sort of saying that you secretly have these evil thoughts. It's quite funny.
Yeah, and it's called unconscious bias training because you're unconscious for most of it.
You are. We're going to go for another question. This came from Twitter. This one's from Kate. And Kate said, did an MP go too far by comparing housing migrants at a holiday camp to a concentration camp? So this was at Labour MP Clive Lewis, and he made this comparison. Hasn't gone down well, has it, Leo?
No, it hasn't. But, I mean, I've been to Butlins. He's got a point. The machine gun towers, they're a step too far. No, this is a really crass point.
It is crass,
and he tried to double down and justify it by saying, well, when you have people in a sort of camp, they're not in a camp, they're in actual, structures, buildings, and they're concentrated in one area, well, that's a concentration camp. And it's like, no, that's not a concentration camp.
I mean, that's like trying to fudge it in the aftermath. It's absolutely clear when you use the phrase concentration camp, what kind of images get evoked.
Yeah.
You're talking about ghettos, you're talking about, Belton and all that kind of thing. But it's inappropriate, right? Surely it's inappropriate, Lewis.
What, because I'm a Jew? Is that why you're
That's not. No, that's not why. But you do understand why people are sensitive about this comparison?
I think it is totally inappropriate because it just reminds everybody else what horrible conditions we have in England. Yeah. Normal people have in England. Then here they're giving immigrants concentration camps, which sound better than the houses that people are living in today.
But they're not, of course, Lewis. I mean, as Leo says, there are buildings. Sometimes it's hotels and that kind of thing. And I'm not against that. I think people do need to be housed. But the idea that to evoke that kind of thing, it's suggestive of there's a kind of endemic racial bias that they're persecuting people, but they're trying to house them and help them.
No, well, by using that term, but that guy just shows that where he stands. That he wants these people to get the best, when the fact is they've smuggled their way into the country.
Well, has he maybe just misspoken and sort of showed his hand a bit too much? And maybe, it's become overly politicised, this.
Yeah, and I think he's moving in circles where talking like that doesn't get pulled up because everybody agrees with him.
See, this is the thing about some politicians. Sometimes I think they forget and their filter goes. Like when Angela Rayner said all Tory voters were scum. Is that what she said?
Yeah.
And you could tell, but she doubled down as well.
Yeah.
And then apologised eventually. So he'll probably apologise.
But the other side of it is, the side that I want to point out, is that the fact that they do think that it's horrible living conditions.
Okay, but it's not quite the same as horrible living conditions and then concentration.
In their mind, it is. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe they think, my God, I'd rather be in Auschwitz than in
I doubt
Butlins.
it. I doubt it.
Yeah, you know
Auschwitz and Butlins.
They're like British food. Oh, it's British food.
It's horrible food.
We've got to move on now.
Maybe he is thinking
Lewis,
that.
we've got to move on, I'm afraid.
Okay.
I can listen to you all day, but the audience can't. Our next question is from John. Where's John? Hi, John.
Yeah. Is it cruel to kick delivery robots?
Yeah, so this was a funny story, I thought. Well, a construction worker has been the subject of online vitriol. There he is. He got caught kicking a food delivery robot, and the video showed the robot apparently got stuck in the snowy conditions, so he sort of put the boot in to try and get it to move along. And cruelty to robots, Lewis, I don't think that's an issue, is it, particularly? I mean, I'm worried about them taking over anyway, the robots. So the more cruelty to robots, as far as I can see, the better, you know?
I was upset when I saw it because I thought to myself, there's another small white guy who's being persecuted.
Well, Lewis, I mean, come on, this is nothing, Leo, is it? This is just...
Well, we can't really tell. It looked like he was just helping push the robot out of an icy patch.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of frustration that was going on there as well.
You can't tell. And you know something? It's just horrible that they have these things going around. It's just basically saying, you know, your job is next.
I know, well, absolutely.
It's great.
Yeah.
I think it's going to boost the economy. And they're saying, you know, oh, we need to have all this, like, mass immigration because there's so many roles to fill. We've got little robots to do it now.
I think it's absolutely terrifying, especially when they get AI, artificial intelligence. And then you see kicking them would be a human rights issue at that point when they're sentient. But we don't want that. Anyway, we've got to actually, unfortunately, go for a break now. But after the break on Free Speech Nation, Lee Jassim, a professor at Rutgers University, will be here to tell us why he was denounced as a racist by over 1,000 academics for using a quotation from the famous musical Fiddler on the Roof. See you in a minute.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
As a guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, man.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Lee Jussim, a distinguished professor in the Department of Psychology at Rutgers University, New Jersey, has found himself denounced as a racist simply for using a quotation from the musical Fiddler on the Roof. Jussim began an academic paper by using the quotation, "Of course, there was the time he sold him a horse and delivered a mule," from the song Tradition. But the reference did not find favour with other academics. I'm joined now from New Jersey by Lee. Good evening, Lee. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
So why don't we start at the beginning? You had written this article. Perhaps you could give us some sense of what the article was about.
The article was essentially a critique of the way in which diversity rhetoric is used in academia. And the core idea was that it's used disingenuously. So diversity kind of has come to mean two different things. The conventional meaning is like lots of different things. Diversity. In fact, my article was titled "The Diversity of Diversity," because the word can mean two different things. So most people, I think diversity means lots of different things. There's environmental diversity, biospecies diversity, lots of different species, right? It's just lots of different things. Okay, but in progressive circles in general and academia in particular, there's a very narrow form of diversity which is restricted to providing benefits to groups the far left deems worthy of receiving special benefits. And the main point of the paper was to press academia to be honest about its use of its term, because often what it's doing is selling to the world diversity in the broad sense and delivering it in the extremely narrow, politicized sense.
I mean, this is a common feature, isn't it, of critical social justice activists, is that they use language in such a slippery way. It can have more than one meaning, and they sort of rely on the good nature of their audience to interpret it one way when actually they're kind of smuggling in other discourses.
Right. I mean, that's exactly right. And that's what's the context was a discussion of a prior paper, and the prior paper did exactly that.
Right. So you're criticising this other paper, and in order to do so and to make your point, you invoke the song Tradition from Fiddler on the Roof, and this in particular this lyric. What were you trying to say by quoting this lyric?
Well, that academia was, metaphorically speaking, when it promises diversity, people hear it as diversity in the broadest sense. So it's promising a horse, but delivering a mule. It's delivering this pared down, narrow, politicized, progressive form of diversity.
And then why do people find that offensive?
I don't think anyone found it offensive at all until it was denounced by a black Stanford professor as drawing on 19th century racist tropes. So apparently, through maybe the mid 20th century, there was this association of American blacks who were primarily, agrarian, agricultural, rural, and mules. So mules were a common feature on the farm. Black people were common throughout the agrarian South. And so there is good reason to believe that, through about 1950, there was some association in some people's minds between black people and mules.
And to be clear, so the author of the piece that you were criticising, that was a black author, is that right? And then they've said that by quoting this line about selling a horse and delivering a mule, you're invoking this now obsolete, from what I can gather, racist association. But You couldn't seriously believe that. That's such an uncharitable interpretation of what you're doing, and obviously not true, right?
It's more than, I mean, in his paper, and this is a quote, he claimed that I was drawing an explicit parallel between black people and mules. That's the quote.
Unbelievable. I mean, so what happened then? So you then had academics coming out in force against you. Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, the whole picture was a little more complicated because there were also, I mean, that's true, but in addition to being true, that's not the whole story. There were a series of papers that were accepted for publication discussing this original article. And there are allegations that the editor mishandled that process. And I sort of got caught up in that. My paper kind of got caught up in that. And so there was an open, very quickly, after the denunciation by the target author, Stephen Roberts, academics organized on social media, essentially an academic outrage mob formed within hours. Within a day, there was an online open petition calling for the editor to be fired, denouncing all of us as racists, calling for all of our accepted papers to be retracted, and for Roberts' denunciation to be published instead.
So what I find astonishing about that is there is absolutely no way that any of those academics believe what they are saying, and we know that they don't believe it because you would have to be an infant to actually make that connection. So what's going on here? This is political expediency, right? That's all it is. It's just opportunism.
I think many of them believe it, actually.
Really?
Yes, I think academia, at least the American Academy, has gone very, very far left. And I think there's an element of opportunism, there's an element of expediency, there's an element of a power grab. But in general, listen, I study political psychology, including radicalization. People usually, not always, but they usually believe what is obvious to other people as their own propaganda.
So in other words, they are so accustomed to detecting racism and racist power structures that they really have started to see it in obviously innocuous places.
Yes, I think that is correct, actually. Yes.
So that makes it very hard, doesn't it? Because isn't the upshot of this that if you want to criticize an academic or a point that an academic has made, and if that academic happens to be black or happens to be gay or whatever, then you better not criticize him?
That seems to be the current evolution of academia.
So what do we do about that? If academia has become so obsessed with group identity that we can't have a discussion about what is true and what is false anymore without bringing that into account, where does that leave the academy?
I think it mostly leaves the academy as, at least on politicized issues, the quasi-scientific wing of far-left political parties. I think that's where it leaves academia. The issue of what to do about it is actually a complicated issue. And I'm not sure, ideas have been percolating. I think there has been some movement in the UK to include strengthened protections for academic freedom and punishments for universities that violate academic freedom. We don't yet have that here in the US. People are advocating it, and who knows how it's going to evolve. The problem here, though, I think, is that the Democrats are unlikely to embrace anything like that. And the Republicans have a history of sort of excessive overreach and backlash when they do things like this. So, for example, the state of Florida is governed by Republicans. The governor is Republican. The state legislature is Republican. They recently passed the Stop Woke Act. Among the things that the Stop Woke Act does is all but eliminate tenure protections. Now, if you see academia as like the enemy, then maybe what you want to do is just like as much damage to academia as possible. But if what you want to do is protect academic freedom, the last thing you want to do is revoke tenure protections. I think it's a really misguided response.
Well, it doesn't sound like either side of the political aisle are going to do anything to improve this, but it's a fascinating story, Lee. I really appreciate you coming on to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So after the break on Free Speech Nation, Jeremy Clarkson comes under fire, gingerbread men go non-binary, and 3 camels escape a nativity play after outsmarting the wise men. It's almost time for social sensations. See you in just 1 minute.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there. Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So it's time for Social Sensations. This is the part of the show which we devote to the wild world of social media. So we're going to start with the good old-fashioned Twitter storm, of course. This one was prompted by Jeremy Clarkson and comments he made about Meghan Markle. This was in the Sun newspaper. So Clarkson said he hated the Duchess of Sussex on a cellular level and dreams of the day she is, quote, paraded naked through the streets of every town in Britain while crowds throw lumps of excrement at her. He also claimed that everyone who's my age thinks the same way. I should also add, he also says that they should chant shame. Yeah. What he's doing here, of course, Leo, is invoking Game of Thrones. There's a very famous scene in Game of Thrones where Cersei Lannister is paraded naked through the streets while people are throwing excrement and shouting shame repeatedly. It's a Game of Thrones reference. So I don't know. Apparently people have said, I mean, Carol Vorderman, for instance, tweeted saying, not on any level, in any circumstances, is it OK to write this stuff about any woman. And no, we absolutely do not think the same. And so people, and even Clarkson's daughter has condemned this. So people have said this is inciting violence, but he's not. He's I think he's drawing on this Game of Thrones.
Yeah, he's employing hyperbole. He's known as a comical writer. He's employing hyperbole to make a point. I don't think anybody read that and was like, oh my God, I need to do this.
No,
we need to parade Meghan naked through the streets and throw literal excrement.
I mean, it's not going to happen, is it?
Yeah, it's not going to happen. He's being way over the top. And what's really nasty, I understand Carol Vorderman criticising him. She's taken time out of her busy schedule, flogging terrible loans to idiots to criticise him. But John Bishop, a comedian, has come out and criticised him. Yeah, John Bishop said, oh, this is terrible. John Bishop has made jokes about killing his wife with a spoon. He's made jokes about decapitating his wife and keeping her head in the fridge, and then he's like saying, "Oh, but this is inciting violence."
I didn't know that. Is John Bishop's argument that because he's a professional comedian, people will know that the killing wife with a spoon thing is a joke, but Clarkson isn't a comedian, so people will assume he actually wants us to do this? Is that the idea?
Yeah, that must be the thing, I guess, because John Bishop said it on stage, whereas Jeremy Clarkson wrote it down. I mean, who ever heard of something funny being written down?
Lewis, if people took everything that you say on stage literally, you'd be arrested. You would be in prison. You wouldn't be here right now.
No, but the reason why I get away with it is because people like me, and they don't like Jeremy Clarkson. I think that's the end of the line.
issue, is it?
They don't like him. His persona is not likable. He's considered.
I like him.
I like him. Well, you're one person. Just one.
He's got more fans than just one. But yeah, okay, you might have a point that actually the reason why people are so angry is because it's Clarkson that's done it.
Yeah, but I think most British people do not like Meghan Markle. Nothing personal against her, she's just horrible. So when I heard that, I thought, what is the big deal? She is horrible. She's destroying.
Yeah, but I mean, no one wants her paraded through the street. I mean, but it doesn't even need to be said, does it?
Well, I would pay. Okay. I would pay to see the video. But
let's move on now. We've got this one from a bakery in Blackpool, which has caused a stir on the internet for labelling their biscuits as non-binary gingerbread people. And this is a post on Facebook. It's had over 1,000 shares and 7,000 comments. They're now debating the biscuit. It's become like a big thing. This biscuit, there it is, the Cottage Bakery biscuit. And the owner of the Cottage Bakery, Paul, says it was done as a bit of a laugh because of people's comments in the first place. It wasn't done to be politically correct, and some people have thankfully taken it as a joke. So, mind you, the Co-op, I remember a few years ago, the Co-op introduced a gender-neutral gingerbread biscuit. So actually there is a precedent for this. I know that because I have to read this stuff all the time. Some of it sticks in my head, and they weren't joking, they weren't trolling.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what do you think of this guy?
I mean, this is clearly just mocking the whole.
It is.
The whole idea of it. But yeah, the Co-op doing it for real is.
Yeah, they did it for real.
Is more worrying because I mean, biscuits don't have a gender anyway.
They don't, do they?
We say it's a gingerbread man. It's not really a man, or it doesn't have chromosomes. It's just a biscuit.
It's not anatomically accurate.
And I think the bigger picture is that it incites violence against ginger people.
Very true. Well, if we're going to go down that road with Clarkson, and this is
red-headed people might take offence.
And also, what about a gingerbread man that identifies as a wedding cake?
Yeah,
this is a minefield that I didn't realise. And we're just going to head to Brisbane, Australia, for our final sensation. Let's have a look at this one. Now, these are pictures from Channel 9 News after 3 rogue camels escaped a live reenactment of the Nativity. The animal actors managed to make their grand escape when ringleader Cyrus opened the gate, allowing them to roam free on the streets of Brisbane. You don't see that very often, do you? It's just a bunch of camels roaming down the street. Oh, that's nice. It's what do they call it? Rewilding.
Yeah.
What do they call it?
Nature returning to. Yeah, I mean, he's got the hump.
Is it not the case that camels are native to Australia?
They're not native, but they were taken there and now they live in the wild.
There's a lot of wild camels in Australia, yeah. You've got any thoughts on camels, Lewis?
Well, I have a thought on portraits. Using the portrait mode for using
filming
filming.
So you're worried
for a camel. A camel's in landscape.
Their landscape is just.
That's your take on this. They should have filmed it in a different way.
It really bothers me.
It does. It bothers me too. Now that you've mentioned it, it bothers me too. So listen, we have got time, I think, just for a couple of unfiltered dilemmas. Thanks for sending them in. Our first one came from Kevin in Stockport, and Kevin has said, I mistakenly received a letter which was meant for my neighbour. I'm a bit skint right now and it felt like it had money in it. Turns out it was a court summons for an unpaid fine. I really like my neighbours and don't want them to get done, but I can't tell them about it without them knowing I'm a petty little thief. What should I do? I mean, yes, so clearly he shouldn't have opened it, but now that he's done it, he's kind of he's made his bed, he's got a lie now, hasn't he?
I mean, surely he can just repackage it in a new envelope and post it to them.
Could it be that simple?
I'd have thought so.
I think it probably is. Any thoughts, Lewis, on this one?
How about just, like, throw it on the ground in front of their house and hope they see it?
Maybe do that, or don't make friends with your neighbours. You know, don't worry about being enemy of your neighbours. Absolutely fine. But look, thank you so much for sending those in. We're going to get to more Unfiltered Dilemmas next week, I promise. And thank you for joining us for Free Speech Nation tonight. This was the week, of course, where Greta Thunberg seemingly backed censorship. Jeremy Clarkson united social media against himself. And saying men can't be lesbians apparently became something you could possibly go to prison for. Thanks so much to my panel, Lewis Schaefer and Leo Kurz, and to all my guests this evening. And if you want to join us live in the studio, be part of this audience, you can do that. Just go to www.sroaudiences.com. We'll see you next week.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking rather mild, grey and wet to start the week. Let's take a look at the details. Milder air will be in place across the whole country on Monday morning. It will be a cloudy start across Scotland with outbreaks of rain at times and strong blustery winds. Northern Ireland will have a cloudy and breezy start to the day with some outbreaks of rain and drizzle at times. It will feel much milder than of late. Thick layers of cloud will bring some hill fog across parts of northern England, particularly across the Pennines. It will be mild and windy with drizzly outbreaks.